believe these bills are going to be, no, not strictly in numerical order. The first bill is going to be House Bill 512, then House Bill 820, then 824, 1026, 944, 948, 1118, 1235, 1253, 1262, and 1289. And several of these are bills that were pulled out of the Rules Committee and are sponsor only. So let me begin with House Bill 512. Is Delegate Rosenberg here or somebody representing him? You lose. Okay, let's go to 820. Is somebody here from the Montgomery County delegate? Okay. Okay. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Sorry, I hope that wasn't creating a hostile work environment.
As my civil procedure professor used to say, I'm just going to let that lay where Jesus flang it.
Okay.
Good afternoon, my wonderful colleagues, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Sarah Love, on behalf of the Montgomery County delegation to present to you House Bill 820. This is a local bill relating to Maryland Route 200, also known as the Inter-County Connector. We have had a lot of concerns about speeding on the ICC. So what this bill does is it asks for 8 Wyval monitors, also known as real-time speed monitors. So 4 in each direction. It also asks for some increased enforcement and a study so that we can take a look at what's happening on the ICC. So that's it.
Okay, I understand John Sang is here. Oh, yes, there you are. I recognize you from the Zoom. Please come on up and give us your 2 minutes.
How are you doing? I'm great. How are you? Good to see you.
Please begin, sir.
So I begin. Great. So yes, I'm John Sang, and glad to be here. I chair Safe Roads Maryland, the Maryland Coalition for Roadway Safety, as well as serve as officer with the Greater Olney Civic Association. I've seen the interlineated form, which I suppose is what Delegate Love has just given us an overview on. Respectfully, we're left with no choice but to support the interlineated form, but we're confused and would really appreciate an explanation as to the variances why this bill today bears really no resemblance to the bill that Senator Kramer introduced back in December and was introduced as HB 0820 at the beginning of this session. We know when we did a little homework that everything that was submitted and publicly available that was written or in oral testimony registered strong support for this bill in its original form. Next, these statements of support were received by the Montgomery County Delegation Subcommittee, from the Montgomery County Executive, Mark Elrich, the Greater Olney Civic Association, our coalition, other community members, as well as receiving commentary from the Montgomery County Council, which did have some questions. In addition, sir, we presented highway crash and speeding data collected by MDTA already, which demonstrated crash increases in the past several years, confirmed by crash data we obtained from the state of Maryland on our own, and submitted this at the request of Mr. Fraser Hidalgo. And finally, we've been attending, testifying, reaching out to address all committee members, in particular the Montgomery County delegation that Delegate Love heads, and have received no questions, feedback, pushback, criticism, nothing that said this original bill is unacceptable, we're going to have what we have today. So I represent folks who put a lot of time and hours into doing what we are amateurs at, and you folks are the professionals, so thank you very much for hearing my point of view.
Thank you, Mr. Sang. Any questions for the delegate who's representing the county delegation or Mr. Sang? Seeing no questions, thank you so much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 820. Let's go to House Bill, oh, I see Sandy Rosenberg has arrived. House Bill 512, Sandy Rosenberg. Why don't you give us your 4 minutes and explain to us the bill?
I obeyed the speed limit coming here from upstairs, so that's why I was a little late, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, we're very happy to hear that you're walking responsibly.
And the bill that this committee passed, for the record, Delegate Sandy Rosenberg, the legislation that this committee passed several years ago regarding speed cameras on the JFX, the Jones Falls Expressway, Interstate 83, as anyone from the Baltimore metropolitan area, I think, can attest, that bill has had its desired effect. There are fewer people who are zooming by at excess speeds. What this bill before us today does is say, this is how the money can be spent that is derived from those who are still speeding and still being ticketed. What the bill would do is make it explicit that the money, under the existing law, the money can be used to pay for the system, the ticketing system, and to improve the roadway itself. What the amendments really become the bill. What the amendments do is say that authorize that money can also be used for the exit ramps, for any of the intersections adjacent to those ramps, as well as for pedestrian safety. The one specific example, which does happen to be in the 41st District, is that the Poly Western High School complex is right on Cold Spring Lane, and you now have more than 100 students every morning, every afternoon, taking the light rail to get to this Cold Spring stop, but then walking across the street. So that this bill would make it clear that one of the permitted uses of the revenue generated from the speeding tickets on the JFX is for pedestrian safety, as well as for the roadway at that interchange extending as far as the next traffic light. Okay. In addition, the bill provides that since there's been some reporting that there are a significant number of unpaid tickets, people who have been ticketed but have not paid their fine, the city would be required to report September 1 of each year on what steps it is taking to improve collection of fines, as well as to issue a report every September 1 on how it proposes to use the revenue, what, capital purposes under the broader permitted uses it would be using that revenue for. And I will say, that according to DLS, there are 6, I think, interchanges on the JFX, and they are located in all but one of the legislative districts in the city, except for 43, but there are a significant number of people who, if they're heading west to go downtown, they also use the Northern Parkway interchange. So the bill was approved unanimously by the city delegation as amended, and would urge this committee to continue on the path that it began by authorizing the use of the traffic signals, not the traffic signals, that the ticketing, the speeding cameras on the JFX by adopting these amendments and this bill, House Bill 512. So thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Let me call up Liam Davis with the City Department of Transportation. Liam, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes, sir. Once you start talking, you have 2 minutes.
It's great to be here, Mr. Chair, and dare I say my favorite committee in all of Annapolis. So I'm merely here for informational purposes to provide an update on the program. I will encourage folks, if you're around, stop by 88 State Circle. We have these pamphlets here that provide a summary on the program thus far. But since citations went live last July, the southbound camera has issued over 108,000 citations, the northbound camera a little bit less at just over 90,000. This corresponds to a 54% drop compared to the 90-day warning period, which means cars are slowing down. The city is finalizing its capital improvement plan for FY24, and there is money appropriated for roadway safety improvements as well as resurfacing. So we are very thankful of this body approving the legislation back in 2021, and I'm available for any questions.
Yeah, I mean, let me first recognize Delegate Ruth, but then I have a couple of questions myself. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is simple, Delegate. I have fairly regular occasion to drive in the city, and isn't it so that some of these entrance and exit ramps on 83 and the associated interchanges are quite terrifying to drive on with traffic coming from multiple directions?
Well, I can tell you that getting off at Cold Spring Lane, well, I'll give you two examples. Getting off at Cold Spring Lane heading north, it's bumpity bump. It clearly needs to be repaved. And then also, if you get off at Northern Parkway heading north, coming from downtown, it's 4 lanes, and if you want to make the left turn to go onto Falls Road, for me, to say to go to Meadowbrook to swim, most of the time, I stay in the right-hand lane, take a right at Falls Road, and then safely make a U-turn. I don't think I'm violating any laws when I do that. Make a U-turn to head north on Falls Road, because you can't. Now, the city has budgeted money to start addressing the problems at Northern Parkway, but the answer, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have a number. I think that I-83 is one of the few roads where I genuinely feel a little scared when driving on it, because it has the killer combination of sharp turns, high speeds, and poor pavement, all in a terrific 1, 2, 3 punch in rapid succession. So, number one, what plans is the city undertaking to make that area where the cameras? Let me back up and say that my memory of it, and I don't drive that road very often, but there's one particularly perilous, curvy area, and that's where the cameras are, correct? For the most part?
They're located southbound, northbound 41st Street near the Pepsi sign. Okay,
all right, perfect. So, question number one, what are you guys doing to make that intersection safer? What are your plans there?
So first and foremost for our CIP coming up, general road resurfacing is what we have planned. So getting that pavement condition up to interstate highway standards is a critical piece that we're looking at. In terms of specifics, in terms of highway safety, we have a number of initiatives we're working on. One is enhanced vegetation management. So these funds has actually helped us cut back a lot of the overgrowth that has been hanging actually into the highway and into the off-ramps and on-ramps, blocking signage. We are also working with a consultant on upgrading all of the signage along the interstate, modernizing the signage. We're looking at upgrading our traffic attenuators that help, if a car kind of veers off as it's going, those, they're kind of like the buckets full of sand that you see on an off-ramp. A lot of those on 83 before this program went live were damaged, and it was challenging for us to replace because they're pretty expensive. That's an example of where we're making those upgrades. Now, longer term, as the program kind of matures and we're able to bank some of this money, it is a federally eligible road, so we can bank money and then tap federal dollars. There are significant capital improvements that are needed for that exact area by the Pepsi sign, just structural improvements that need to be done. But likely the larger scale capital projects are going to require federal funding, which has a longer trajectory. We're focusing right now on shorter term improvements to demonstrate to the legislature and to the public that the money is going back into the interstate.
Okay, I do have one other question, but I'm going to recognize Delegate Love first before asking it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did you say that funds from these cameras have been used for signage, for cutting back on vegetation on the entrance and exit ramps, and for those sand things on the exit ramps?
So initially, we were programmed some upfront money from finance department that initial year as the program was ramping up. So some of that money actually wasn't really tied to the cameras, but we did get an opinion from city law department that revenue from the cameras, after the camera operations are paid for, city law department did let us know that enhanced vegetation management, enhanced signage could be supported by these revenues. The enabling legislation explicitly said this is supplemental to what we're already programming for the interstate, and I want to be very clear that that's what we're doing in practice.
Got it.
So you want to get the permission to use those funds for a number of intersections, or excuse me, off-ramps and on-ramps. How far are those off and on-ramps from where the cameras are placed?
They're essentially, as Delegate Rosenberg said, part of the interchange. And if you talk to people, within State Highway Administration, they'll explain to you that that interchange is really a critical piece of that interstate system, even though it's technically not on 83 itself. What the delegate talked about with Falls Road and Northern Parkway, a number of cars going off.
No, but these are exits and and on ramps, are they not, to 83?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so how far are they away from that dangerous area that we wanted to control?
Pepsi sign. Well, there's,
Oh, how far are they from the Pepsi
Yeah.
sign?
well, they're both north and south
Yeah.
because
Like
they're
within half a mile or a mile?
It's probably
Cold
a
Spring
little
is
bit
within-
further. So the Pepsi sign, the cameras at 41st Street are closer to Cold Spring Lane. Northern Parkway and Falls Road, which the delegate is referring to, is a little bit further north.
Let me explain to you why it is I'm asking the question. This committee has evolved itself into a philosophy of saying that we will do cameras if there is a dangerous place. We will do the cameras for a limited amount of time, a 5-year sunset, that the proceeds after paying for the expenses have to go to primarily fixing the problem that the camera is addressing. And there was a fourth thing, what am I forgetting? Oh, and the Wyval devices. The devices that tell you what speed you're going, so that, you see you're going 87 miles an hour and perhaps you should consider, slowing down. So the reason, what I think you were asking for departs from our philosophy with respect to using the money to fix the thing that is specifically dangerous. So if you could respond to that, because I'm not a person who wants to be hyper strict about it, but I do want to uphold that principle, because these are the principles that allow us to pass these bills on the floor of the House without getting too much pushback.
Absolutely. I think what we can say with confidence is the areas that we're looking at, and I think the intent of Delegate Rosenberg's bill is looking at Interstate 83 in Baltimore City as a system. So there's the road itself, but then there's the collector roads that are incorporated into the interchange, the bridges that go over 83, the on-ramps and off-ramps. We're not talking about taking revenue and spending it, in South Baltimore, which is nowhere near 83. It's really focusing on the 83 corridor, those on-ramps and off-ramps immediately off of it. And I think to Delegate Rosenberg's point about Cold Spring Lane and the proximity to Poly Western, there's an MTA light rail stop that's literally located in between the Jones Falls River and the interstate. And there's a ramp that students are forced to go up onto Cold Spring Lane. And if you'd really have to look at it through Google Street View or drive to see it yourself, from a pedestrian standpoint, it's just not safe. And we think that improving those pedestrian, that infrastructure is fully in line with the intent of the program. Even though it's not directly on the interstate itself, it is part of the interchange. It is an interchange with 83.
So, okay, so that would explain to me why you don't think the current law covers it. But you're making the argument that it contributes to the safety of the car traffic in that spot that's dangerous. That's what you're arguing.
There are several hundred students who are in the morning and in the afternoon crossing a busy intersection of Cold Spring Lane, a busy thoroughfare, which is an interchange, because of the light rail. And one thing to consider is to have a bridge so that
A pedestrian bridge?
pedestrian bridge. And if the committee wants to narrow that language so that it speaks the issue of pedestrian safety, there is the amendment language is pedestrian safety. If you want to narrow that so that it is, it's only the red-headed Cold Spring Lane intersection, if you know.
Thank you for not mentioning Inuit tribes people.
I did not. So if you want to draft an amendment, I'm fine with that.
All right. Well, let me recognize Delegate Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate Rosenberg and Liam, for bringing this. And I think if I can help clarify some of the chairman's concerns. One place we didn't mention is coming off of 83 onto St. Paul Street. That is literally, as you're accelerating speed, you're coming onto a ramp that immediately goes on to St. Paul Street and the intersection of Mount Royal. And if you're coming off of high speeds and then coming there, I mean, it literally veers right into like regular road traffic that's about 25, 30 miles an hour. I mean, that in and of itself is unsafe because I can roll right into potential traffic and you have to quickly either stop or see that you have the opportunity and gun it to go onto St. Paul Street. So I would certainly concur that it is a safety issue, especially because of the speeding and then coming off the off ramps and on ramps are so tight from 83 onto whatever road you're going on, that it's, I think it causes, certainly for me at that intersection, it causes great anxiety. And if there could be something that we could do in the city to lessen that, it would be certainly much useful. And I think certainly not solves the problem, but it solves some of the problems of individuals coming off of 83, speeding onto off the exits.
Any further questions for the sponsor or Mr. Davis? Okay, seeing none, then thank you very much. That concludes the public hearing on House Bill 512. Absolutely. Let's proceed to House Bill 825, the Prince George's County delegation. I understand our friend, the protocol chair, is going to present the bill, and also is testifying are Troy Barrington Lilly and Calvin Washington. So if you...
Yes, can they come up?
Absolutely, yes, they can. They can flank you as your armed guards. There we go.
Right.
Protection detail.
Oh, my goodness, isn't this wonderful? Do you know this is my first time in 4 years coming back here?
Oh, I was feeling the sense of loss, and I couldn't put my finger on what it could be.
Couldn't wait to get back. Definitely. Any old way. Thank y'all. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman Barvey and the members of the wonderful ENT Committee.
Today, we love it when you suck up.
I got to do what I got to do, you know that. Today I'm here to introduce House Bill 825. This is a local bill and authorizes the town of Forest Heights to undertake urban neural projects for blight clearance by exercising the power of an eminent domain. Let me get it right now. You know I had to pronounce the right word. To acquire properties to blight areas that are zoned for commercial purposes. This power has been placed since 1960. The General Assembly has enacted more than 60 separate public local laws, authorizing individuals, municipalities to carry out this urban renewal projects by the rehabilitation of slums of blighted area. 18 municipalities in Prince George's County has this power, such as College Park, Hyattsville, and Capitol Heights, name a few. The mayor of town council, and I believe that this tool is necessary to revitalize the town to its glory through economic revival. We request a favorable report from this wonderful committee. And I thank you very much for introducing this bill. And I would like to make sure you request a favor to this report, and my witnesses here will talk their nice 2 minutes. I've already trained them already.
Spectacular. Who would like to go first?
The mayor.
Mr. Mayor, welcome.
Greetings, Chairman Barvey and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. My name is Calvin Washington, and I'm the mayor of the town of Forest Heights. I'm here to strongly support House Bill 825, which would grant urban renewal authority to our town. I believe this legislation will allow us to effectively address the impact of the blighted properties in our community. We are in desperate need of this legislation to effectively address the impact of these blighted properties on our neighborhood and business communities in Forest Heights. This urban renewal authority would provide several benefits to our town. First, it will allow us to clear blighted properties that are owned by absentee landlords. These properties are frequently left vacant, abandoned, vandalized, and in disrepair. And they decrease the surrounding property values, erode the health of local housing markets, pose safety hazards, and reduce local tax revenue. By clearing these properties, we can prevent this cycle from continuing and make our community more vibrant and attractive. In conclusion, the Urban Renewal Authority of House Bill 825 would greatly benefit our growing town and allow us to continue to make progress in the right direction. I strongly urge you to consider our request and support this important legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And you, sir, would be Troy Barrington-Lilly, I presume.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman Barbie and esteemed members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. My name is Troy Barrington-Lilly, and I am the Council President of the town of Forest Heights. I'm here today to testify in support of House Bill 825, and I would like to thank the bill's sponsor for introducing this important piece of legislation. In our growing town, we have seen an increase in blighted properties, which are impacting our community's safety and quality of life. This bill will give us the tools that we need to address these issues and take back control of our neighborhood. In particular, there's a dilapidated commercial building near the entrance to Forest Heights Elementary School that has been abandoned for more than 18 years. Children pass this building every day on their way to school, and the property is fenced off and has accumulated trash and debris in its parking lot. This bill will give us the added flexibility to sell the property to private parties who can efficiently repurpose this blighted property for reuse. Furthermore, to clarify, this bill requires the town to pay fair market value for any property it identifies as blighted, similar to other eminent domain laws. This ensures that we're being fair and equitable in our efforts to address blight in our community. In conclusion, we believe this bill will be a vital tool for the town of Forest Heights to address the issue of blighted properties in our community. We urge the community to support this bill and help us revitalize our neighborhood. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much. It appears we have a question from Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe there's an amendment in the Senate to also include residential in this bill. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the sponsor and her witnesses? Well, Mr. Mayor and Council President, thank you very much for visiting us. Thank you, Delegate, for visiting us. Don't take.
It's been my great pleasure.
Do not let it be so long. Okay, that concludes the public hearing on House Bill 825. Let's go to House Bill 1026. Delegate Tavares, who is presenting on behalf of the Prince George's County delegation, and she is joined by a virtual witness who we'll get to after she's had a chance to testify. Delegate, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I couldn't stay away. It just dragged me back. So it's not on, the conversation is not changing. I'm going to say ditto to Mayor Washington's comments, but I have prepared a statement for you all. And again, I want to say thank you all, Chairman Kumabarv and Vice Chair Dana Stein and committee members. It is an honor to be before this esteemed body once again. And I am here to ask for your favorable report on HB 1026 as amended by the Prince George's delegation. And again, this is also a local bill for Prince George's County. This bill authorizes that Prince George's County to exercise powers of eminent domain to acquire neglected, blighted property a quarter of a mile from designated transit-oriented development or Purple Line stations within a business improvement district with the goal of redeveloping and revitalizing said property. This bill prohibits the property from being taken without just compensation to the entitled party, as agreed on between the parties or awarded by a jury. Infrastructure such as highways, trains, and light rails have been known to be unforgiving of communities of color throughout the country by dividing those who have with those who have not. Redlining exacerbated poverty extremes throughout the United States, as detailed by Richard Rothstein's The Color of Law. Right here in the state of Maryland, the Beltway achieves this within Prince George's County between the wealthier, more Caucasian community outside of the Beltway compared to the concentrated poverty often found within communities of color inside the Beltway. More recently, we have also seen dramatic displacements of communities of color due to the light rail developments along H Street in D.C. and San Jose in California. In extreme cases, we find property owners engage in benign neglect with the goal of profit maximizing, resulting in the gentrification of community by selling to the highest bidder, deriving up prices and making it unaffordable for established residents to age in place. In closing, Prince George's County needs HB 1026 to have agency in its own growth and revitalization, while providing a way to preserve and give voice to the community in any future property development. More specifically, HB 1026 will facilitate the implementation of the county's General Plan 2035 and help preserve as many communities as possible along the Purple Line and transit lines. As such, I humbly ask for your favorable recommendation of HB 1026 as amended by the Prince George's County delegation. And I say thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Let's turn now to Chris Harrington, who I believe is with us on Zoom. Mr. Harrington, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the members of the committee. I just want to echo the sentiments of Delegate Tavares in my support of HB 1026. What I think is sort of critical is that at the heart of this proposal is providing communities with greater influence over development and redevelopment activities. In 2022, my business partner and I started a company called Community Redevelopment Partners, and it was really started after years of working in the real estate industry and seeing that in many cases, the concerns and the plans that community members had for their communities were sometimes ignored. And so what we feel strongly about is that the bill before you is a step in the right direction in providing community members with more power and authority over development. It allows Prince George's County to exercise eminent domain for neglected and blighted commercial properties in certain areas, as Delegate Taveras mentioned. And I would say in closing, we fully understand that the legislative process is an iterative one, and we've had the fortune of working with Delegate Taveras and also the Prince George's County delegation to continue to refine this proposal. But we stand in support because it's going to provide community members with greater power, greater autonomy, and authority over those critical developments that oftentimes have health and social impacts for generations to come. So I'll stop my comments there and just again echo my support for the proposal as amended. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We do have a question. Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I normally would not ask any questions for this local bill, but I wanted to ask if, since I think this is coming to my subcommittee, if you had a chance to look at MDOT's letter. Did you see that the Maryland Department of Transportation sent a letter?
I haven't seen that. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I had not seen it, but I will review it. This is the first time that we had a chance, because I don't know if I also had access to all the comments. I've been having email problems, so we've been having some issues. So I don't know if they had emailed me directly.
I can just quickly summarize it. Basically, they want clarification if this is intended to be able to empower Prince George's County to condemn state-owned property.
None of the land that I'm looking at this time is intended for is state-owned land.
Okay. Okay, right. But I think they just wanted clarification if the bill allows that, because they essentially say that they would have to enter litigation with the county if the county started to try to take state land, or if the bill authorized that. So that's why I wanted to flag that.
No, and that's a really great point. We're not interested in coming up against the state.
Yeah, totally.
And I don't think that would be wise, given that we're also looking to partner with them in a lot of these projects. But for example, a particular site that I'm very keen on is the transit station at New Hampshire and University. I don't know how familiar you are with that intersection, but that intersection is the highest number of pedestrian deaths in the entire region, Virginia, DC, and Maryland. That's where the greatest number of deaths are. And at this point, the strip mall, and that also is the location where you have the highest number of bus takers in the region as well. Over 12,000 people take buses there daily. And if you look at the strip mall right behind it, it looks like crap. The owners live in California and they could care nothing about my community there. And what you find is people urinating, sleeping on the floor, and inebriated. Yet that's an area where I feel would be visionary to have a full-scale library with a mixed-use development that would be transformative for that area, if we could make that a go.
That actually triggered another question I had, because if you look at the fiscal note, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that, but it mentions that in 1996, the state gave Prince George's County the authority to use eminent domain through something that I'm not familiar with, but it's called the Prince George's County Redevelopment Authority.
Yes, and we do that.
Yeah, could you just, for my own benefit, and pardon my ignorance, just explain to the committee how this bill's contemplation for use of eminent domain differs from what the county can already do using the Prince George's County Development Authority?
So with the it actually would be tied with the Redevelopment Authority. What we do with the Redevelopment Authority is similar, but it's not necessarily tied to TODs. So the thing is that we're trying to be very intentional, or I think we should be very intentional with the development around transit-oriented development in line with Plan 2035. Oftentimes we write the thing is that in Prince George's County, we write a lot of plans, but none of them get executed. You have to be very intentional about it, and it depends who's sitting at the top. That is my reading of how politics kind of works inside. Now, the redevelopment authority redevelops, basically, I've had the majority along, let's say, Route 1. Some of my most prominent projects were buildings that were emptied for over 30 years. And we were able to do Studio 3807. We were able to do Artisan 4100. Those were amazing buildings, and they were done in conjunction with the Redevelopment Authority, and they provided market rate housing that was very transformative for those municipalities. So it's not unlike, but it's just that it's not tied to transit, it's not tied to a TOD.
Okay, got it. And then last question, I promise, Mr. Chair, sorry. I keep reading more and more. So the way, I know, I should stop reading. Really the only way this bill seems to differ in sort of its core language from all the other urban renewal, eminent domain bills we get, and we get quite a few of them every session, is that the public use requirement is not spelled out in this bill. So, you know, in Kelo versus New London, the Supreme Court case in the mid-2000s, it said that basically two things were required for a state government to exercise eminent domain. One is just compensation, which is called out in the bill, and the other is some sort of public purpose or public use. And all the other bills that we get on this topic includes explicit language that any taking has to be done for public use. Your bill does not appear to. Is there a reason for that? Was this a discussion you had with the drafters, or is this like you're not really familiar with what I'm talking about?
Well, we did run the bill through the AG's office. Okay. And they gave us a pass on it.
Okay. Oh, okay, good.
And they gave us a thumbs up. The reason why I'm a little hesitant to just declare just public, just a public intention is because, yes, we want to, my discussions do want to include a public library that's 40,000 square feet, but we also want to do a public-private engagement with a mixed-use housing, which is not necessarily a public use.
Right, yeah, just public purpose. Yeah, the Supreme Court doesn't require it to be public sector run, just that there has to be some sort of public purpose. But if you could send the AG letter to the committee, that would be awesome.
Not a problem. Well, it was kind of like a comment, but I will definitely send over whatever we have. That was actually Delegate Turner was the one who received the comments, because both we put it in for the previous bill and this bill.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Not a problem.
All right. There appear to be no further questions. Thank you very much, Delegate. Thank you, Mr. Harrington. That concludes public hearing on House Bill 1026. Let's proceed to House Bill 95.
Love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's proceed to House Bill 944, Charles County Delegation. And I understand presenting will be Delegate Harris.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Kevin Harris, welcome to the committee. You are signed up favorable on behalf of the delegation, and then there are 3 people who are signed up favorable with amendments. So we're going to listen to everybody, and then we'll entertain questions. Go ahead, Delegate. You have 4 minutes.
Well, good afternoon, Chairman and Vice Chair and members of this awesome committee. For the record, I am Delegate Kevin M. Harris, representing District 27A, Charles County and Prince George's County. So I'm up here on behalf of my awesome colleagues in the Charles County delegation. I'm here today to present House Bill 944, Charles County Motorized Mini Bikes Regulation and Enforcement. Today we have Sergeant Christina Gilroy and Jerome Spencer on behalf of the Sheriff Barry and the Charles County Sheriff Office. House Bill 944 seeks to enable Charles County to regulate off-the-road motorcycle and all-terrain vehicles. That may include impoundment and conditions for release from impoundment of vehicles operated in violation of Maryland law. The Charles County Commissioners are seeking the support of the Maryland General Assembly for the authority to pass a local law that would deter continued increase in this illegal activity. There is no opposition to this bill, As such, I urge a favorable report on House Bill 944.
Wow, in your first attempt here, you used your time very economically. We love that. Christina Gilroy and Jerome Spencer, I believe, are live. Is Jerome Spencer around?
He is actually in front of another committee at the moment on the Senate, so I think
Okay,
he's going
well
to
then,
miss this.
please give us your 2 minutes, and then we'll go to Danielle Mitchell.
Yes, sir. I'm Sergeant Killer with Charles County Sheriff's Office, representing Sheriff Troy Berry. I just wanted to show favorable in this bill. The Charles County has seen frequent and increasing misuse of off-road vehicles such as dirt bikes and all-terrain vehicles. In our county, we are seeing reckless behavior, weaving in and out of traffic, popping wheelies, obstructing traffic, and generally placing citizens in fear. We see individuals driving off-road on private and public property without permission, and not only does this behavior violate the criminal law, it causes extensive property damage to the area. From 2019 to 2022, we had 4,076 calls for service in reference to mini bikes. Apprehending the individuals involved in this behavior poses challenges to what we can do. Maryland prohibits unregistered motor vehicles such as all-terrain vehicles from being operated on the highways, and despite that, the growing trend of these motor vehicles on the roadway continue to operate. They also often elude and flee and elude the police. Recognizing the need for action, the Charles County Commissioners submitted a request to our local delegation for statutes that would authorize the commissioners to implement rules and regulations relating to off-road vehicles. The most critical component of this request is the ability to allow the impound of vehicles used to violate both the traffic law and criminal trespass law. The language requested by the commissioners is attached, which we sent into the committee. HB 944 can and should be amended to provide the commissioners with the authority needed to address the significant issues of concerns for the people of Charles County. We request a favorable report for this amendment.
Thank you very much. Let's go now to Danielle Mitchell, who is with Charles County Government. Danielle, are you with us?
I am, yes. I'm having trouble starting my video.
Okay, well, just take your time, and there we go.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, good afternoon, committee members. I'm here on behalf of the Charles County Commissioners to express their support for HB 944, motorized mini bikes regulation and enforcement. You do have our written testimony, so I won't repeat it. I would just simply echo the sentiments of Sergeant Gilroy, stating that certainly the Board of Commissioners is 100% behind this much needed legislation and would like to really support our local law enforcement agency with getting this problem under control. Also echoing the need for an amendment to the bill, specifically to include the all-terrain vehicles and motorized mini bikes, to include a registration requirement with fees that was not included in the original language of the bill. We want the ability to do the fee, and we believe we need to be enabled by the state to do that. We'd also like to have included the age restrictions and impoundment and daily storage fees. So again, the ability to implement those impoundment fees will be very important to have us be able to pass a local law to include all of those various aspects. So with that, I would yield my time, but we would urge a favorable report. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the sponsor or any of his witnesses? Apparently not. So that's the end of the public hearing for House Bill 944. Let's proceed.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have another Charles County delegation bill, but you're not presenting it. Delegate Davis is. So we're going to House Bill 948, golf carts on Cobb Island.
Thank you. Thank you. I know. Thank you so much.
Okay. Golf carts.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Chairman Barve, Vice Chair Stein, colleagues. My name is Deborah Davis from District 28 in Charles County. As the chair of the Charles County delegation, I'm here to present a local bill, and I know how much my committee loves golf carts. So I am here to present HB 948, and it's titled Motor Vehicle Registration Exceptions for Golf Carts and Low-Speed Vehicles on Cobb Island. So I have made it very clear to Charles County that they needed to draft a narrow golf cart bill if they ever expected it to pass. So this is what we've done. And this bill limits the golf carts to a specific area. That specific area is Cobb Island. I'm going to show you a picture in a minute. There are 857 residents. I just checked the 2023 census. It is a peninsula. The golf carts are limited to streets where the speed limit is less than 30 miles per hour. You can only drive from dusk to dawn, and the vehicles have to have approved lighting, and it also requires a valid driver's license. And the bill also states that you are to drive to the far right of the roadway. There is no opposition. We respectfully, well, I don't want to stop yet, because I want to show you a picture. I just grabbed this off my wall in my office. And maybe I'll pass it down. This is a map of Charles County. We're speaking of this area all the way down to the bottom, which is a peninsula, and that's called Cobb Island. Somebody want to help me out? Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Jeff. So, thank you. This is Charles County, and we're talking about this area, yes, which is which is 3 sides by water, and it's just this area of 857 people. Thank you. There is no opposition, and we respectfully request a favorable report.
Okay, let's hear from Danielle Mitchell once again, and then we have a couple of questions.
Thank you. Again, on behalf of the Charles County Commissioners, we express support for HB 948, exceptions to golf carts and low-speed vehicles. HB 948 establishes exceptions to the motor vehicle registration requirements for golf carts. Again, as Delegate Davis has already stated, there are a lot of very specific criteria for using those golf carts, like only operating between dawn and dusk, maximum speed limits that do not exceed 30 miles per hour, and to the far right of the roadway. We have been in communication with our fire and rescue, as well as our sheriff's office, who have both indicated no opposition to the bill. They've had no issues with respect to golf carts being utilized thus far on the island, which is happening despite the fact that we don't have this law in effect, but that's a different story. Residents of Cobb Island have sought this legislation for a number of years to allow for golf carts and low-speed vehicles to be lawfully used on the island, and the Board of Commissioners does support their request. And there seems to be similar legislation previously enacted in other communities, to include Allegheny, Somerset, St. Mary's, and Dorchester counties, which have apparently benefited those counties. So we would encourage a similar report from this committee, and we just thank you for your time.
Okay, we have a number of questions. First question goes to Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate Davis, for presenting a very narrow bill when it comes to the golf carts. I appreciate that. My question is about the inclusion of low-speed vehicles, because my understanding is they can already drive in the areas that you've talked about, highway in which the maximum posted speed doesn't exceed 30 and all of that.
Ms. Mitchell?
That was not our understanding. I didn't think that they had the legal ability to do that.
Okay, great. So would you be amenable, because it's already in current Maryland law, to taking that out?
The low-speed vehicles?
Yes.
I believe that refers to the Amish in the horses and carts. Is that what we're referring to?
No, there are actually, there's a category called low-speed vehicles that I think about 20 years ago, I'm told, were put in the transportation code that they can operate in the manner that you've listed.
That is fine. When I read the bill, I had no idea what a low-speed vehicle was. Okay. So I believe that we are fine with the golf carts.
Okay, great. Well, we can talk more offline.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, next question goes to Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate, my question is about Cobb Island. the way you pointed to it on the map, and you pointed out that it's actually a peninsula, not an island, is it an incorporated area, or is it, like, is it a municipality?
It is not.
It is not. So where, is there a clear demarcation boundary line? Like, is there a river, or, I mean, my concern is that if you just say an area, like if we said, for example, I use the Montgomery County designation, if we said we're going to allow golf carts in Silver Spring, which would be crazy, but we're going to allow golf carts in Silver Spring, that would encompass a huge area that we didn't intend it to encompass if we weren't more prescriptive about the area that we were including.
So
Delegate, if I
Yes.
may?
Yes.
You can only access Cobb Island by one road.
Okay.
It's Neal Sound Road. And so I think it's very clear where you would be allowed to use those golf carts.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Davis, is it true that Cobb Island is in fact an island?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Is it?
It is. It is.
It is.
How is it an island?
It's surrounded by water on all sides.
There's one road that gets you to the island.
You never fail to surprise me, Delegate.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions for, well, that's very helpful, I think. Okay, any further questions for the delegate or for Ms. Mitchell? Seeing none, thank you very much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 948. Let's go to House Bill 1118, Delegate Hutchinson. Welcome back.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said, when I first came here, being from Dorchester County, you'll probably see a lot of me. This is my fourth time and my last time for this session. So for the record, I'm Delegate Tom Hutchinson from District 37B. I represent Caroline, Dorchester, Talbot, Wacomico County. I know that I'm here on behalf of House Bill 1118, Midshore County's Sunday hunting repeal of time restrictions. I know you've heard a number of Sunday hunting bills here in committee, so I don't want to belabor that too much other than to say this is a local courtesy issue. I do have letters of support from all four of my counties to extend all-day hunting of deer and in some cases some wild bird and turkey in specific counties. I do know that in 3 of my 4 counties there was no opposition that was heard at their county meetings when they heard this, with the exception of Caroline County. And I'm always willing to work with the opposition if there is a compromise that is needed. So without further ado, I respectfully ask the committee for a favorable vote on House Bill 1118.
All right, there are 3 people who are signed up in opposition, but we'll first entertain questions for the sponsor. Delegate Love? No? Okay, no questions. So let's go straight to the people who oppose the bill. And they would be Christy Claggett in person, and then we have 2 virtual witnesses against, Leslie Pisano and Corinne Marie Pollenquin. So, Christy, welcome back to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, committee. Christy Claggett for the Maryland Horse Council, the statewide group that represents the entire horse industry. In this particular instance, recreational riding, which is like a $231 million added to our economy. The issue of Sunday hunting interferes with the recreational riding, plus the walking and the bird watching and the biking. But because to share the Sunday is the important point that we want to make. We thought we already had the compromise with the 10:30, and now it's wanting to be reversed. So what other compromise is there? I don't really understand what other compromise there could be. So there is no necessity for all species, all seasons, all Sundays. The deer population is really the only population that's a problem in these mammals and game birds, and that can be handled with the DMPs that the farmers get to use. They can hunt with DMPs 365 days every Sunday. They arrange it within their community, people stay away, but the recreational hunter that sort of floods the county or Maryland during the deer season, which has 22 Sundays, is not effective in getting the deer population down. They do end up killing more on Sundays when they hunt on Sundays, but they don't kill more overall. So it's really managed hunts or the DMPs that get the population down. And as a farmer, I'm for getting the population down. But I'm also a recreational rider. And just the last 2 weekends, I was riding in Trapp, Maryland, and in Hurlock, Maryland. And my group goes all over Maryland. So it is not a county issue. It is a Maryland issue. All Marylanders should be able to use all of Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's turn to Leslie, virtually to Leslie Pisano and/or Corinne Marie Palanquin. So Leslie, let's try to talk to you, hear from you first. And there you are, Leslie. Welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. I live in Talbot County, and we have fields and woods where we allow deer hunting. I oppose House Bill 1118, and here's why. Though we control the number of hunters and locations in our woods, we don't know what our adjoining neighbors are doing. Sunday's the only day we feel safe enjoying the woods around us. So I suggest you imagine that you're a deer hunter who's waited all month to get into a deer stand in the morning. The conditions you need is a quiet environment so the deer aren't spooked. Now imagine unsuspecting joggers, chatty walkers, bicyclists, talking trail riders, or families with barking dogs or loose dogs going by an unseen hunter. Needless to say, most hunters would be frustrated with any one of those scenarios. Hunters would rather have a dedicated time set aside where they can trust that folks won't overlap in their shared or nearby natural resources. The families, walkers, joggers, riders, etc., would want to be guaranteed to feel safe and secure walking in or nearby woods without interfering the hunters. As it stands now, hunters have 6.25 days a week to hunt and carry weapons during deer seasons. As Christy says, this does not include the farm permits. That leaves only 3/4 of a day that we can enjoy a weapon-free zone in the woods. This House bill would undermine all the efforts in previous delegates who found a compromise between hunters and all those other outdoor enthusiasts. Let's maintain that trust. I oppose House Bill 1118, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next, let's hear from Corinne Marie Palanquin. Corinne, is she there? She's there, okay. And there you are.
I'm back, yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members, for your time today. My name is Corinne Marie Palanquin, and I am testifying in opposition of House Bill 1118. And I reiterate much of what Christy and Leslie have said. The compromise was brokered back in, I think, 2016, if I'm remembering correctly. And realistically, I would not consider it necessarily a compromise, because a compromise by definition means making a concession on both sides. And there was really no concession on both sides. It was really just a concession on our part. And at this point, we're now looking to lose that as well. The bill covers game bird and game mammal. There's going to be something in season in those categories, probably about 75% of the year. So we're talking about perhaps having just the summers available, the Sundays and summers available for safe enjoyment of our trails. And that's a pretty sad situation for those of us that like to trail ride and enjoy the outdoors. I am a member of several trail groups, and we ride across the state. I mean, we have a truck, I have a trailer, I travel. So including in the Mid-Shore counties, and there's some beautiful areas down there to visit and enjoy. I don't know that anyone that I know would be comfortable riding in the woods on a day that we knew hunters were out as well. One of the statistics that DNR does publish is accident reports, and one of the interesting things you might note if you take a look at those is many of the accidents that are reported are imbibed hunters falling out of deer stands, and I don't know that I would trust that type of hunter to not mistake me for a deer despite how much orange I might wear. So as a result of that, you know, I would urge the committee to give HB 1118 an unfavorable report so that the balance of Marylanders can enjoy the trails. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for these three opponents? Seeing none, thank you very much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 1118. Let's proceed to House Bill 1235. Delegate Wells, welcome back.
Always a pleasure to be here. And ENT, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, for the record, I am Melissa Wells, here to present on House Bill 1235, which revises the process for a home buyer to have their deposit money returned to them when they need to cancel a real estate contract. When a buyer properly exercises a contingency within their contract to purchase a home, they are entitled to receive their earnest money deposit back. There are several provisions of Maryland Code which also dictate that deposits must be returned to the buyer if certain actions are not taken. Unfortunately, this is not what is happening in practice. Today, a buyer's deposit money can be held up for years just through a seller's refusal to sign the deposit release form. This is particularly hard on first-time home buyers and lower-income buyers who have saved for a long time to make their purchases and who do not have other sources of money to put together another deposit for a home purchase. It also hurts the title companies and real estate brokers who have to hold these disputed accounts. HB 1235 would provide a streamlined process similar to what is currently done in Pennsylvania to return buyer deposits when they exercise certain contingencies in their real estate contract. This bill would require a real estate broker or an escrow agent to distribute trust money to a purchaser if the purchaser terminates a residential real estate contract under the terms of a contingency clause. After a written notice of request to return the money is provided to the holder of the trust money and the seller and the specified procedures are satisfied. Within 10 days after receiving this notice, the seller must provide the holder of the trust money with a copy of a complaint filed in the district court or a notarized written request for mediation relating to the distribution of the trust money. On receipt of a complaint or request for mediation, the holder of trust money must hold the trust money until a court order or mediation agreement authorizes the distribution, or the holder files an interpleader action in the district court. Conversely, if the holder of the trust money does not receive a copy of a complaint or request for mediation within 30 days, the holder must distribute the trust money to the purchaser and notify the purchaser and seller of the distribution. A holder of trust money may not be held liable for a decision to distribute the trust money in accordance with the bill's provisions. A claimant aggrieved by a distribution of trust money under the bill's provisions may file an action in the district court. And so it is with this that I ask for a favorable report on HB 1235.
All right, it's a sponsor-only bill. It came out of rules. There are no registered opponents, and the realtors support the bill, but are there any questions? Well, apparently not.
This is my last time seeing you from this seat this year.
Okay, well, what a shame. Oh.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That ends the public hearing on 1235. Okay, we've got three bills from Delegate Stein, and the first one is 1253. Absolutely not. Right. I'm meeting with Sarah first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. For the record, Delegate Dana Stein. First bill is House Bill 1253, which is a repeat of a bill that introduced last year, passed the House. Same result in the Senate that we talk about in other situations. It didn't move. This time, though there is a Senate cross-file. So this bill deals with the fire police, who are fire department members that assist the local fire company with traffic control. They also report to the local sheriff. They can be called upon to assist with many different emergencies, from traffic control to looking for lost individuals. So this bill would allow volunteers who are fire police to add white lights to their vehicles, and these lights can be placed on top or inside on the dash, so that they can be better seen at night. Right now, the law authorizes these volunteers to only have red lights, and the feeling is that they can blend into the background of the emergency scene. So by adding the white lights, they feel there is a better margin of safety, and this bill has been recommended by the Fire EMS Coalition. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I urge a favorable report.
Okay, just before I recognize the first question, and what committee did it die in last year?
I believe it was JPR.
Shocker. Delegate Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As it stands, is it red and white lights or just white lights?
Right now, it is just red lights. Right now, volunteers can only have red lights. So this would allow the volunteers to have either red lights or red and white lights.
Okay. I'm a little bit concerned as to whether people think they're getting pulled over by the police.
This would only be used by the fire police at the scene of an accident. Or I believe in one case it is one group of volunteers are authorized when they're headed to an accident. But it's either that or when they're at the scene of an accident. And Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I can call on a lifeline. I don't know if Bob Phillips is here. No.
So I guess the answer is...
okay, great. So would you want to...
Sure, come on up. The things I let you get away with because you're the vice chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Stein, committee members, my name is Ben Kurtz, President of the Maryland State Firemen's Association. I represent 365 volunteer fire and EMS departments throughout the state of Maryland. To answer the delegate's question, in the Maryland Code, the fire police can only activate their lights when they're stationary. So in other words, if I'm a fire police or Dana or one of the ladies here, they respond to the scene. Once they arrive, put their vehicle either in stationary or park mode, then they can activate their lights. The concern that the fire police has directed to me, and I have asked Dana Stein over the past 2 years that we've tried, is we've all driven and seen an accident scene. What do you see? A blur of red lights. And the fire police would like to have that white flashing light because it breaks up. That is the purpose. Safety for our men and women that are directing traffic. And let's face it, I don't envy them because everybody's a rubbernecker and not looking for that person directing traffic. They're looking at the scene. So we're trying to do safety-wise whatever we can for our men and women that do direct traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a question from Delegate Morgan.
Thank you very much for this very important bill. I understand the law allows the volunteer firemen to have 5 vehicles with red and white lights, correct?
You're talking about emergency vehicles in fire police.
That's what I'm getting. Could you help me to define the difference between fire police and a volunteer fireman?
Okay, the difference is they are members of a volunteer fire company. They're in the code, and I can speak for Harford County. You have 12 people designated per fire company. They are deputized by that sheriff. They go through training and traffic control. They have a background check, criminal background check. These individuals, therefore, can have in their POVs or personal vehicles a emergency light. However, it's not like volunteer firemen who can activate it going to a scene. Fire police can only activate their emergency lights when they're on the scene directing traffic. So that's the different designation. Yes, they still are members of a company, but they're deputized. And so there's, like I can say in Harford County, there's 12 members per company that have fire police that are deputized by the Harford County Sheriff, Jeff Gaylor. They're trained through the Sheriff's Office. They had annual training in traffic control, and they do have a background check.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 1253. Let's proceed now to House Bill 1262. Again, Delegate Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Delegate Dana Stein. This deals with aquaculture. And aquaculture is something that we in this committee and the legislature have been very supportive of as a means to help the Bay recover its oyster population. We passed legislation authorizing aquaculture back in 2010. But one of the challenges with the system is that it is being hindered by long lease processing regulations and timelines. So this bill will help aquaculture by requiring DNR to identify state-owned land that is close to waterways that could support aquaculture in a manner consistent with the existing uses of those waterways, including commercial fishing uses. And I do want to say that with amendments that I'll talk about, DNR is supportive of this bill. The bill would also allow DNR to work with the Army Corps to pre-approve this land for aquaculture leases and accelerate the review of lease applications and the issuance of leases for this land. The bill also would streamline the aquaculture lease application process. Currently, there are no clear deadlines for DNR in this process, which can cause long delays. So under the bill, DNR would be required to advertise a lease application within 30 days of certifying that the application is complete, and would then need to issue a lease within 180 days of the end of the public comment period or the resolution of any protest. So again, the process is being streamlined from one which can take on, it can go on for a long time with no clear deadline for when an application needs to be approved or denied, but still allows for a better part of a year if there is, for example, if there is extensive public comment or a protest. The bill also expands the number of aquaculture representatives on the Oyster Advisory Commission and empowers the Aquaculture Coordinating Council to impanel work groups with representatives from different stakeholders. Now, I mentioned amendments, and these were offered in the Senate, and I'm conforming my bill to the way it's been with the amendments offered in the Senate. They do a number of things. First, and perhaps most importantly, they eliminate the changes to membership of two commissions, the Tidal Fisheries Advisory Commission. It restores the changes to the Tidal Fisheries Advisory Commission and restores the waterman seats on the Oyster Advisory Commission. I know this was, in conversations before the bill and in discussions in the Senate, that was a big issue. So we restored the waterman seats on the OAC. Two members of aquaculture are added to the OAC, and one environmental group, which no longer operates, is taken off. It gives the Aquaculture Coordinating Council authority to convene working groups and clarifies that the bill, and when I mentioned in the beginning that DNR identifies state-owned land that is close to waterways, we're talking about submerged land, and gives DNR discretion about pre-approving land for leasing. So in short, this bill would eliminate some of the barriers that have hindered the growth of aquaculture and will help it continue to grow. So with those amendments, I urge support of the bill.
We've got a question here from before I recognize Delegate Jacobs. It appears that the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the aquaculturists like the bill, and the watermen do not like the bill. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I could say, I believe, I don't mean to
Mollify.
speak for them, but I believe the amendments do address at least some of the waterman opposition.
Okay. Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, something's happened to the floor system because all the testimony's been gone on the last three bills, including this one, which had a lot of testimony. I was looking at it earlier. It's gone. It's not there. So in the last three bills, I thought maybe there wasn't any the last couple bills, but I know there was some on this one, and now it's gone. So there's something going on with the floor system. But anyhow, Delegate Stein, as you know, and I mentioned this to you, this has been the most discussed bill in the Waterman's Caucus all year and the most concerning of all the bills that came in. And I agree that some of these amendments have addressed some of the major issues in the very beginning. And the reason I talk about this testimony, I was wondering if you read any of the testimony from either Maryland Waterman Association, Maryland Oysterman Association, or Jeff Harrison.
No, unfortunately, I have not had a chance. But
well, they really point out a couple of really important issues on page 4. I think it is. Oh, I think it's page 5 in the House bill. But it's in 4. I'm sorry, lines 26 through 29, where it strikes out the, it uses the website instead of the what has been in the practice is the newspaper, published in the newspaper for these the counties where the proposed lease is to be located. Isn't this bill taking that provision out and going to just website only?
that is correct. The current provision for once a week for 2 weeks, publication of information on the application in the newspaper in the county or counties where the proposed lease is to be located is taken out and replaced within and the only item that's left in is the website.
Right, correct.
That's correct.
And, I got to tell you, in the Waterman's community, isn't it so that hopefully you understand this, but technology is almost non-existent. There's internet problems, there's computers. Most of these watermen are still using flip phones, to be honest with you. It's really a challenge from a technology standpoint, and that's one of the things that all these letters are referring to is the problem with that notification. I mean, this aquaculture lease business has been a process for a reason. It's not supposed to be easy. It's a process, and people should have the right to get involved in these hearings. And I can tell you, it's really concerning that the normal practice of advertising in the newspaper is omitted out of this. I thought this was sponsor only testimony, but anyhow, I guess it isn't.
Go ahead.
But I mean, it's a real issue that I think is really a huge concern, especially in this bill, to take that part out of the process.
Delegate, be happy to, consider the concern that you've expressed about the fact that the newspaper notice is taken out. I will say, and Allison Colton just let me know that all the affected waterman committees, county waterman committees, are directly notified when there's an application. But nonetheless, be happy to talk with you about this issue of publication in a newspaper.
I understand, but it's not, protest is for the most part comes from the public. It's not necessarily watermen that do the protesting. There's a lot of people that are involved in these hearings that may be property owners that are very concerned about what's in front of their property, and so well we'll talk about that.
Sure.
That's a big problem if you read the letters.
Okay.
In the testimony.
Understood.
And another thing, as you get down the bay further, the mid-bay area off the state-owned land, where the state-owned land is more predominant, and I think the oyster bars are, wouldn't you agree, they're more, there are many more oyster bars as you go mid-bay, lower bay, wouldn't you agree with that?
I'll defer to
Than
your
the upper
expertise.
Bay. Than the upper bay where you live and I live. But anyhow, one of the other concerns that's come up quite often is this bottom that would certainly be altered by these leases being in front of these state-owned lands, because they're heavily used now by clammers, which are silent. They're nowhere to be found in this legislation, which is another huge concern. Clam bottom, the crabbers and recreational boaters, because if you have a column lease, isn't it so that boats can't run over top of any areas that have column leases for using triploid oysters?
Well, Del, I do want to say that in consideration of whether state adjoining lands would be appropriate, they have to be taken into account the existing commercial uses of the adjacent waterways. So if you have clammers, if you have crabbers there, then that, and so therefore leasing space for aquaculture would be inconsistent with that, then that wouldn't be authorized by this bill.
But that's one of the big concerns is clammers are left out of this thing entirely, and some of this bottom where you're talking about lease bottom and Yates bars where oystermen are allowed to go, there's nothing in the bill that really protects clammers, which are a big part of the, wouldn't you agree they're a big part of the industry because they provide the bait for the crabs and other things. So
Sure, I do agree with you that clammers are very important, but I don't see any part of the bill that excludes them.
Would you also agree that the Department of Natural Resources has been understaffed in the aquaculture department on the whole lease process for years? I mean, maybe, would you agree that that may be part of the problem with the delay in some of these leases?
It could be, certainly.
Because, you know, there is a process in place, which leads me to another part of the bill is, you know, it talks about pre-approvals, and
You guys really talked a lot about this in the Waterman's Caucus.
the entire year. I'm telling you, Mr. Chairman, is the #1 issue. It's very concerning. And, you know, the pre-approval process, I mean, part of the process, isn't it true you have to have the Corps of Engineers, which is federal?
Yes, you're saying,
I mean,
isn't it?
We can't, as a state, we can't, isn't it true, we can't tell them what to do. So, I mean, I don't know how you're going to do a pre-approval process involving the federal government where the tail wags the dog, you know?
Well, I think the idea is that would be a joint effort. I mean, so if the Corps says no, then that's, you know, it doesn't happen. The pre-approval does not happen. Well,
I think there's ways, more efficient ways to speed up the process than some of these that's in this bill. I mean, I'm glad to see some of the amendments that have come in, and it certainly has made it better. But can you tell me how many leases there are that have been granted that have never been planted, or any investment so far?
I could not tell you that.
Because it's quite a bit. And I think that's an area that should be considered in some of this thought of aquaculture, is how much bottom has been leased, but they're paying the $3.50 an acre rent a year instead of the investment, which is what we're trying to do. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Not sure what you're asking me to agree with, but if your premise, if what you're saying is that some of the agreed to leases haven't been utilized, I'm sure that's the case.
I mean, we're trying to promote the whole issue of aquaculture, but there's a lot of bottom that's been leased that has had no investment, just sitting there, and it's not doing what it was intended. So rather than go and try and streamline to go after something else that's very concerning, I think we ought to address the issues that are at hand. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree, but also I think part of the problem has been the fact that, and that you referenced this earlier in saying that perhaps some of the delays because of the fact that DNR is understaffed, that applications for leases where the person who has applied would be ready to go if they got the green light. They're frustrated and maybe eventually walk away because DNR does not get back to them for the reason you stated, because they're understaffed.
So I guess my final thing is Mr. Chairman, this is a process to do this. It should be a process. It should take every part and piece where the public's involved, especially when it comes to, you know, the lands, the waters of the Chesapeake Bay, because we all own them. Everybody owns them. You know, we should do this process where everybody has a stake, has a voice, and I think there's easier ways to address the length of time it takes rather than try to circumvent the process, and that's what's concerning to a lot of people is, you know, we get away from everybody having that opportunity to have that voice, and so we'll talk about it all fine, but.
And I would say, Delegate, everyone still has their same opportunity. The public, interested parties, they still have the opportunity to provide comments. If they're an interested party, they can still lodge a protest. It's just that there is a deadline for DNR to make a decision. I mean, there is that one point which we'll continue our conversation about notice in a newspaper.
Yeah.
You know, I hear you on that.
That's a huge problem. But my final question is, did you see the letter from DNR?
Yes.
It was information. It wasn't support. So I'm just wondering if you saw the same one I did before the screen went blank.
Well, let's see. Let me see if I can find it real fast.
It wasn't in favor. It was information. It's off my screen, but.
It says, the first line is, the department supports House Bill 1262 with amendments.
With amendments?
Yes.
But I thought it was listed as information, but it's gone off my screen.
Perhaps an earlier version.
Well, we'll figure that out.
You know, was just informational, but the one that they've submitted for this one, for HB 1262, is support with amendments.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug, I'm jumping on board with Delegate Jacobs on this. As you said, the force system's down. And in St. Mary's, we have the fortunate piece of having about half of all the leases in the state in the county. And it has probably caused more hatred and discontent than I've witnessed in all my years as a commissioner over the fights over aquaculture versus just plain oystering. I had spoken before to Delegate Boyce about riparian rights, and that doesn't come up this year. And when we discuss protests and things like that with DNR, it's a one-sided show. I've listened to people protest. I've listened to the amount of money that's been spent. I'm encouraged a little bit. They're finally going to use the state lands. But if you start thinking about floating cages and people crabbing and people boating, I think this bill needs a lot of work. I understand that the joy of aquaculture. I also understand the rights of people who are concerned with, you know, when I could use the example of yourself. And you decide you're going to become an aquaculturist. And you can jump on the state website and come on down and find a site, and you can put your $25 down, and you can now be a waterman, and you can do aquaculture in front of a person's house, and there's no notification given until the first 15 minutes before the court appearance starts taking place, and you lose. Now we go to put it in front of state property. That might be a good thing, but I think down in St. Mary's, it's almost an all-out war between the bottomers and the people who want to put in the cages under the premise that aquaculture is going to be the thing that saves the bay. Because I've used the side before, tide goes in and tide goes out. And if everything's at the bottom of the bay, it's only going up a little bit.
Well, Delegate, I'm going to have to ask you to try to put that in the form of a question.
I will work with Mr. Jacob, Delegate Jacobs, with you on this. How's that?
Okay.
Thank you.
Happy to work with both of you.
Okay. Well, I think that brings to a conclusion the whipping of Delegate Stein. Okay,
All
that
right.
ends that bill.
Hopefully my last bill will be tamer.
Well,
but,
let's find out.
Yeah,
House
we'll find out.
House Bill 1289, bicycles at intersections. How
Right.
could that possibly be worse?
Right, who could object to bicycles, safe operation of bicycles? So this bill does deal with the operation of bicycles at intersections. Specifically, it would introduce a concept called stop as yield for bicycles at certain intersections, and sort of builds on efforts in recent years to make roads safer for bicyclists, be it the Complete Streets program or the Vulnerable Road User Bill. It would allow bicyclists to slow down and yield at a stop sign instead of coming to a full stop. And the reason for this is that when coming to a stop sign, most bicyclists have to get off their bike and place a foot on the ground so as not to lose their balance. Once the intersection is clear, they get back on the bike, and because they've lost their momentum, they're usually slow and wobbly as they proceed through the intersection. And I can attest from my own experience, I'm very slow once in having to get back on a bike. And this makes them more vulnerable than when they've stopped at an intersection, especially over a through street with no stop signs, because they may not be seen by through traffic. It's just, you know, we all as drivers or as pedestrians will notice when something shifts, when something moves. But if you have a static, bicyclist who then starts moving very slowly again, they may not be noticed. And so it's safer for bicyclists to approach the stop sign, look to see if the intersection is clear, and without losing balance or momentum, go through the sign. And if you've seen bicyclists doing this already, you may be wondering, why do we need this bill? And it's because it's that practice is illegal. So this practice, again known as stop as yield, it's law in 8 states in D.C. Delaware adopted this law in 2017, saw a 23% drop in accidents between cars and bicyclists at intersections within 2.5 years. NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, said that this practice has a pro-safety effect. And so, and the study that NHTSA did of this practice is attached to my testimony. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I urge a favorable report and hope the questions on this bill will be easier.
How could they not? Nobody signed up in opposition to this bill, so that should be a sign. Delegate Foley.
Delegate Stein, I've experienced this myself, but I am concerned about those intersections with stop signs where either the opposing traffic or the cross traffic does not have a stop sign. And that might be a little bit problematic for a bicyclist approaching, not being familiar with the road, and turning without stopping if a car is approaching. So I was just wondering if maybe we could put something in the bill that, that indicated that as long as the cross traffic is stopping, that would be okay. Otherwise, I think it is pretty dangerous to do this. And then my other question is, what about another concern I have is, I guess is this just 1 lane each way? Is that
could be up to 2 lanes each way.
Up to 2 lanes. Okay. So my concern is about turning lanes in these situations, and whether you think that there needs to be some recognition about, moving over to the turning lane and going all the way through, whether that poses a problem, in your opinion.
Well, what the bill does say is that even if let's say the stop as yield was authorized, then the bicyclist still has to yield to any traffic, and they have to proceed at a very reasonable slow speed. So I think it would those requirements would reduce the chances that that an oncoming vehicle, say that's coming out of the turn lane, would hit them, or the bicyclist wouldn't see them.
Okay.
Yeah, but your point about that the oncoming traffic needing to have a stop sign for this to apply. I think that makes sense, and be happy to consider that. I want to talk with the advocates, but I think that makes sense.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I see this all the time, and I live in a community where there's a lot of four-way stops at almost every intersection. And a lot of the bicyclists just don't even slow down. They just fly right through all the time. And I guess I see what they're doing as dangerous because they could get hit or they could hit somebody else because they're not even necessarily looking at pedestrians crossing the street. I mean, they're not slowing down at all. So is there some enforcement on this that would actually enforce that they should slow down as they approach the stop signs?
Yes, I mean, the idea is that I mean, right now, the enforcement is anyone who, doesn't stop at a stop sign, be it a bicyclist or auto driver, someone who's driving a car can get ticketed. And what the practice you described, I mean, be it for a car or a bicyclist, is illegal. And we're certainly not advocating at all that bicyclists be disrespectful or, not abide by safe practices. The whole idea behind this is to make bicyclists safer by allowing them to do this stop as yield practice. And again, this doesn't mean that if they don't come to a full stop, get off the bicycle, that they can disregard any oncoming traffic or otherwise don't have to abide by the rules of the road. They certainly do. It is just safer. Again, the Delaware example, Delaware case study is a good example, that when they don't have to come to a full stop, but can stop and yield, that is safer for the bicyclist in part because cars are more likely to see them, and so therefore avoid accidents.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Why would they be more likely to see them?
Because they're moving.
Oh.
As opposed to being stationary.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
Okay. Delegate Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How have other jurisdictions dealt with the liability issue?
You mean in terms of apportioning if there is an accident? I don't know. I'll have to say I'm not sure how rules concerning liability change. I imagine they don't change that much because you still have clear rules as to what the bicyclist has to do at an intersection with a stop sign. They can't just blow through it. They can't drive through it. They can't disregard any other cars that are going through the intersection. So I imagine that basically the same rules apply, but I'd have to do a little bit of research to see if there has been, say for example in Delaware, any change in their liability rules.
Okay, and one other question. We have stop signs on a bike path that crosses a highway. How would that apply here?
Stop signs on bike paths that cross the highway. Is it a multi-lane highway, or is this just deals where you have a maximum of 2 lanes in either direction?
One way either direction.
Okay, so this would apply technically in that case.
So they could just blow across the highway?
No, they can't blow across the highway. It's stop and yield. So they have to slow down, but they can't ignore a stop sign.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the public hearing on House Bill 1289, and it concludes the public hearings for the afternoon. Announcements. Delegate Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Natural Resources Subcommittee will meet. I'll give you 10 minutes. 3:55 on Zoom.
Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have been told this is my responsibility. For new members, It is the tradition of this committee, especially the new members, at our committee party for you all to provide a skit for our entertainment. So just giving you fair warning, gentle ribbing is encouraged, but be nice. Thanks.
I personally like the savagery. Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, don't be too nice. Moment in history.
Moment in
yeah.
ENT history.
We're taking a little bit of a different direction today, actually. It is the 40th anniversary of this committee's infamous Sludge Day, where they spent all day discussing a variety of legislation related to sludge, and specifically whether or not the state government would have the power to preempt localities' authority over sludge. A lot of the same themes that we hear today were brought up 40 years ago in 1983, including MACO came in unfavorable. They were concerned that this would preempt localities. There were a lot of folks from Back River that were concerned about sludge dumping into Back River from the Baltimore City sewage treatment plant. Yes, but the reason that we're celebrating today is that exactly 40 years ago, after Sludge Day, that evening, everybody came together and reached the Great Sludge Compromise of 1983. And the person who brokered that deal was actually the chair of the Joint Sludge Committee, none other than the late Sheila Hickson. So if we could put our hands together for Sheila on her day to honor her. Yes, yes.
Okay, so just listen up about, we're going to be meeting as subcommittees and voting as a committee pretty frequently. I expect that we will vote as a committee tomorrow and the day after, and of course we're going to be balancing all of this with dual voting sessions on the House floor as well. And of course, we're probably going to be here as a legislature on Saturday. Hopefully, we won't have to meet as a. You know what? I can't promise anything. If we have a spare moment to vote, we will vote. That's just the way it's going to go. There are a lot of bills to work on between now and Monday night. So yes, Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The floor system's still not working. So I'm kind of curious as we go into this long, lengthy subcommittee without the floor system.
You know, look.
Is there any idea when the electronic testimony is going to come back?
I don't have any way of answering that except to say to my subcommittee chairs, you know, if somebody doesn't want to vote on a bill and we still have 2 or 3 days, doesn't want to vote on a bill because the system isn't available, I think you should, you know, take that into account and be liberal in, you know, within reason. If somebody's being ridiculous, then, you know, bash on ahead. But I mean, but I think it's important that we be cognizant of the fact that the information isn't always up, and you know, we will, you know, we'll just schedule more meetings to cover it all when the information is available.
Thank you.
Yeah, Delegate Boyce.
Natural resources, 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock.
Oh, see, we wasted 5 minutes. That's what happened. Okay, we're adjourned. So let's go back.